Courage is not being fearless. It is taking action in spite of fear. Hervis Daubeny is seen by many as a coward and a weakling. A leader of the Blackstone Legion who fled from his masters after only one season of service and then was too cowardly to face the consequences of his actions. It's easy to see Daubeny as spineless or cowardly, but behind his seemingly fearful and arrogant demeanor lies the heart of a lion, and it's time he shows himself. Today, we are going to discuss Daubeny as a character and decide once and for all if the Lion of Feronia is a king or a coward. The trouble, though, is that Hervis Daubeny's place in the story is limited. He only really has a few meaningful positions, so in order for us to truly explore Daubeny as a character, we have to use what little we have and fill in the gaps. So, let's begin. Hervis Daubeny. His very name has merit to it. Hervis means battle-worthy, and Daubeny is a surname that can roughly mean white or brilliant. Like his namesake, Hervis Daubeny was a brilliant man and cunning. Not the most gallant of knights, and certainly not the strongest, but he was intelligent. Hervis Daubeny was a capable strategic mind who was gifted in understanding battlefield tactics and how to take advantage of enemy weaknesses or weak positions. He made up for his lack of raw strength by focusing instead on military maneuvers. However, many who served with Hervis noticed quickly that while he wasn't an incapable warrior, he rarely led on the front lines. Daubeny often led from the rear or safely behind palisades. Obviously, as he would put it, the commander does not meet the enemy first. He must survive to command. Some saw the wisdom in his thought process, while others just saw cowardice. Whatever you think of him, though, it was apparent that whatever his battle skills, his tactical mind was definitely not in doubt. With the rising of the Blackstone Legion under Apollyon, Hervis saw an opportunity and didn't want to miss out. Apollyon warmed to Hervis' skill in battlefield logistics and tactics, but saw the weakness in his character. It's actually strange. One must wonder why Apollyon, a woman who detested weakness in others, especially her subordinates, would ever even consider Daubeny as a resource. Perhaps to humor him, or perhaps because she saw potential in him. It's possible that Daubeny was not nearly as cowardly as we consider him to be, and Apollyon knew this. Whatever Apollyon thought, though, Holden Cross, her second in command, never truly came to like Daubeny. Cross and Daubeny were just two total opposites. Daubeny wanted status, station, wealth, position. He didn't want to be on the front lines, but rather bask in the glory of victories and the riches of his successes. Cross had no interest in ambition or station, and sought only peace for Ashfield and its people. The arrogance that Hervis displayed and his dislike of combat ruffled Holden's sensibilities. Meanwhile, Holden's self-righteous attitude and headstrong nature made Hervis see him as a liability. Needless to say, the two never really saw eye to eye, though they had a begrudging respect for each other. But unlike Cross, Daubeny was very shrewd and learned swiftly the true nature of Apollyon. Somehow, he uncovered secrets about her and began to understand what she was planning for Heathmoor. She wasn't fighting for the glory of Ashfield, nor was she fighting for riches or glory. She wished to plunge the world into further war, to reignite the fires of battle once again.
So, what is the real plan?
War. Huh? The natural state of our species. Yet these monsters flee from it. They're cowards. We must be brave for them.
Hervis was not about to be a part of this action. Stealing what he could, he fled from the Blackstone Legion with as many supporters as he could manage, and escaped to a small fortress in Ashfield to hide. Apollyon was furious. And though he never liked Hervis much, Holden Cross requested of her to go get Daubeny himself. He might be a traitor, but he was still a knight. He had to have some degree of honor left in him. "Let me try to speak reason to him," he said. Now hearing that Holden was coming, Daubeny enlisted the aid of local mercenaries and sellswords, including a very promising warden with no master. When the Blackstones attacked, Hervis assessed the situation and knew his prospects were grim. He had better tactical planning, but Holden Cross had numbers on his side, and there was no back door for Daubeny to flee to. Holden tried to get Hervis to surrender peacefully, but Hervis fought back, eventually leading to the Blackstones breaking through.
Daubeny! It doesn't have to be like this!
Keep them off the walls!
My lord. Break it down! Break it down!
Holden stepped forward again after breaking through and raged at all the needless death and demanding that Daubeny confront him. And upon meeting, Holden demanded that Daubeny own up to his sins and prepare for a trial by combat.
Stop! Daubeny! Daubeny! Show yourself! These warriors don't have to die. Trial by combat. Right now.
What? Fight you? That's not a trial. That's an execution.
It is in this moment that many see Daubeny as a coward for not fighting Holden directly, calling it an execution. And certainly, it is a cowardly response, worthy of shame. But from Daubeny's perspective, he had little other choice for his own well-being. Daubeny is well aware of Holden's battle skills, and knows for a fact that he is far stronger than he is. After all, Holden is Apollyon's executioner. Fighting him would indeed be a death sentence, so he appeals to Holden's sense of honor. Have me fight someone more of my skill level. Holden agrees to this, and offers him the chance to fight his second-in-command, Adamar.
Then fight my second.
You will be my second.
And again, Hervis plays the cowardly role. Fearing he won't be strong enough to defeat Adamar, he enlists the help of the mysterious warden for his aid. Having seen the warden in battle during the protection of the keep, he knew that the warden was skilled and would likely be able to beat Adamar. Now, on the one hand, it could be argued that this is Daubeny at his most cowardly. Or you could make the argument that Daubeny was being tactical again. It's true, Daubeny just appealed to Holden's sense of honor, and Holden is offering him the chance to fight his second, a more close match, and Daubeny is again shrinking from it. But consider, even if Daubeny did defeat Adamar himself, his problems would not end there. Holden may have been an honorable man, but Apollyon did not care for honor. She wouldn't simply leave Hervis alone without taking something from him. He needed to face punishment for his crimes against her. Apollyon was in the middle of consolidating her power on Ashfeld by assimilating the Night Legions into the Blackstone Legion. If Hervis defeated Adamar and escaped Blackstone persecution, knights who did not support Apollyon might flock to him as the one who escaped the Blackstones. This fame and notoriety would bring Apollyon back at some point to finish what she started and put him down. To save himself, Daubeny had to make a sacrifice. His own pride for his life. A sacrifice that is indeed cowardly and shameful to many, but tenacity and endurance means survival, no matter the cost. And Hervis was indeed tenacious. When the mysterious warden defeated Adamar, Holden relieved Daubeny of his sword and knighted the warden as a Blackstone Knight.
It will not do for a knight of the Blackstone Legion to be defeated by a common mercenary. Kneel.
This action both stripped Daubeny of his finest warrior, but also his sword, essentially shaming him as a mercenary. Holden even gives Hervis the warden's old sword, showing the clear difference between them now. The warden has taken Daubeny's place in the Blackstone Legion, and Daubeny is nothing more than a mercenary now, a nobody, and he must live with that shame. And it is shameful. Hervis was humiliated, shamed, and forced to slip into quiet obscurity to hide from Ashfeld, while Apollyon began her plans.
We're finished here.
But Daubeny took this shame to heart. He began to realize that while all he'd done at this point was keep himself alive, he was no closer to becoming the ruler he'd wanted to be. He wanted wealth, power, and fame, but more than anything, he wanted to be a lord, a ruler, a leader. But now he had shamed himself. But he would use his second chance to change things. Daubeny traveled to the forgotten fortress known as Feronia, a fortress located on the edge of Westlake Bay, overlooking a massive lake. It's believed this fortress was once built by the Roman legions before it was abandoned during the Cataclysm. From this forgotten holding, Daubeny began consolidating resources. Its close location to the water made it ideal for fishing, obtaining crops, and keeping livestock. Many weary and fearful peasants from across Heathmoor came to Feronia under the promise of food and shelter. So soon Daubeny was host to many serfs and peasants from Valkenheim, the Mire, and Ashfeld. This large workforce allowed Daubeny to restart his life as a local lord, naming himself the Lord of Feronia, but without any official sponsorship or say-so of a real lord or king. It was just a self-imposed title. Even so, warriors detached or forgotten began to come to him for aid, for salvation. Daubeny was hospitable to any and all who came, so long as they swore allegiance to him. For entertainment and to test his new vassals in battle, Daubeny would hold matches in his arena to build up morale, to test his warriors, and to remind them of their valor as well as his. Hervis was finally a lord of his own making. He did not have to ride the coattails of a stronger ruler like Apollyon to reach his power. Instead, he became his own legend. Things changed, though, when the Year of the Harbingers began to take root. Signs of another cataclysm began to emerge, and Daubeny began to wonder how he would evade the coming damnation. He had many great knights under his command, and the Vikings of Valkenheim were becoming desperate. After being chased out of the mire by the Hitakiri, and after the Black Prior had bested them and sent the alliance of samurai and Vikings plummeting into disarray, the Vikings were nursing their wounds, and Hervis saw his chance. Leading his army into Valkenheim, he began a campaign to do as Apollyon did, crush the Vikings before they could get back to their feet. But he would do it better than Apollyon. He would show no mercy. He would crush them all. Doing this would surely win him favor with the other lords of Ashfeld, and better secure his position when the cataclysm came. The Knights of Feronia were ruthless and efficient, taking great advantage of Daubeny's tactics and plans, and soon they would control much of Valkenheim. And it was to come to pass that Daubeny would learn of a secret weapon the Vikings were hiding at Stor's stronghold. Not wanting to take any chances, he sent a scout ahead to try and find the weapon and secure it for him so the Vikings wouldn't have means of fighting back. However, the scout never returned. Something didn't feel right, and Daubeny's survival instincts told him he should quit while he was ahead. However, some of his more headstrong and fearless followers believed that they could take the stronghold easily. Against Daubeny's orders, they launched an invasion of Stor.
For all. We knew the Vikings would not yield quietly. Yet, none of us knights expected this. The wrath of the Jormungandr.
The Jormungandr cultists fought back and summoned forth their master, the Great Serpent, to decimate the knights. Few of the knights of Feronia escaped the battle, and those who did return told Hervis stories that made him shiver in his armor.
That was when it all began. The Earth's reckoning. Some called it Ragnarok.
Hervis ordered an immediate retreat from Valkenheim to avoid the wrath of the Jormungandr warriors. His brief sensation of victory had been short-lived. He would simply have to reconsolidate, rethink, and just wait for the storm to fade. But as the storm faded, a new bit of news came to Feronia that frightened Daubeny more than the Great Serpent. News that Qing Pass, the fortress of the Wulin, had been attacked by knights of the Blackstone Legion. Daubeny was mortified. Apollyon was now long dead. The Blackstones should have been disbanded. He dispatched scouts and informants to learn what he could. So he was one of the first to learn of the new master of the Blackstones, the one who would eventually lead the Order of Horkos. But when Astria came to Daubeny's home to invite him into her order, he was not there. Daubeny had gone into hiding once more. When the Horkos Order began its massive takeover and launched a corruption upon all of Heathmoor, Feronia was certainly not spared. The corruption decimated his fortress and the crops his subjects were making. Food and water became scarce, and his subjects fled, as did he. Hervis could not stay in what was an obvious target location for the Order of Horkos, and so he hid himself away. Hervis was beside himself. He'd finally made something of himself. He'd built his dream with his own merits, his own skill, his own tenacity. He'd finally come so close to achieving his goals. He couldn't let it all fall here. He just couldn't. And it was then that Daubeny finally, after many years, began to show himself. The cowardly lion found his courage. Rallying his followers and loyal vassals, he took his small army to the Battle of the Eclipse, where the forces of Chimera and Horkos were fighting beneath an eclipsed sun. Now, the forces of Chimera were great, but they had only recently been established. Horkos, meanwhile, already had a foothold in Heathmoor, and were massive. Holden, now Griffin, looked much older. He was tired. He was not as sharp as he used to be. He was struggling against the younger and more bloodthirsty Astria. Summoning up his courage, Hervis Daubeny led a countercharge into the side western flank of the Horkos line, while he himself ran to the injured Holden Cross. Throwing himself in the way of Astria's blade, he managed to land a single blow on the warmonger queen, which sent her reeling back. Astria was shocked and furious, her victory stolen from her by not any coward, but a king of cowards, a trick imposed by Hervis Daubeny himself. Holden couldn't believe his eyes as Astria nursed her wounded shoulder. The Chimera alliance rallied, but instead of pursuing, Hervis gave the order to withdraw. He knew better than to stay. Astria was not fatally wounded, and he was no match for her in a drawn-out fight. The only reason he'd struck her cleanly at all was because of her shock at the arrival of his army. She would rally, and if the warmongers launched their corruption blasts, the casualties would make recovery impossible. Holden Cross knew better than to question the tactical genius of Hervis and agreed to the order. Chimera may have lost the battle, but it was a tactical victory all the same. Astria was humiliated as Daubeny had once been. Her victory stolen from her by what she perceived to be a coward, a surprise attack having shocked her forces, and her casualties having nothing to show for it. As blood dripped from her wounds, she recalled the last words she'd heard from Daubeny as he turned to help Holden to his feet.
That is how it is done, you see!
Griffin was given treatment in Feronia, which the Chimera Alliance was now using as a base of operations to recover, resupply, and rebuild. Holden Cross and Hervis Daubeny had a long talk in private about what had become of each other over the years. Holden revealed he had not fully forgiven Hervis for his cowardice. It had cost good men their lives, and that was something Hervis would have to live with. But Griffin and the Chimera Alliance were in his debt, so the two agreed to work together and rebuild the alliance. With Griffin backing him, Hervis Daubeny was truly dubbed the Lord of Feronia and the official sponsor of the Chimera Alliance's actions. A great banquet was held to celebrate their unification and to acquire more members of the alliance. But Hervis had done far more than that. By making his home in Chimera's new base, he'd ensured his security. Astria would never attack here for fear of meeting Chimera's full forces. Not only this, but he had the loyalty, trust, and support of some of the finest warriors in all of Heathmoor, from every faction. And though Griffin and him still had their disagreements, even Holden Cross seemed pleased to have him aboard. Hervis Daubeny had accomplished what he'd always wanted: to become a king of his own land, to live a safe, secure, and lavish life, to bask in the glories of his victories and accomplishments. All it took to acquire it was the boldness to finally stop hiding from glory and to start seeking it. Though it's so easy to write off Daubeny as a coward and scoundrel, perhaps the true nature of Daubeny was harder to recognize. Daubeny is aware of his shortcomings and weaknesses, more so than anyone, and perhaps the true irony of it all is that his own awareness of his weaknesses is what blinded him to his more outstanding and selfless aspects that he had hid away for so long. But now, the lion in Daubeny had at last shown itself.
The Chimera Alliance welcomes you all. But first, you shall prove your worth to me. Once you're in, you take an oath. You swear to stand united, unwavering. You swear to fight with honor, not hatred. You swear to emerge victorious. That is how it is done, you see.
I want to give a big thanks to Vita Neon himself for giving me all of the Daubeny fighting footage that you see in the video. He's an excellent YouTuber, really love his content. Go check him out, link will be in the description. Thanks again, Vita. Couldn't have done it without you.